ラッキーに食料届けようと思ってな。
Huh, I wonder if those would actually taste like fruity pebbles to grand nudes. What would they use as milk? We open this week with a puppy dog tale, which is certainly a unique way to open things. Shoma had returned a dog to its owner as his latest part-time job for the day. Thus, it seemed like he'd be able to take a load off for the rest of the day until he got an unexpected visitor.
たくさんの眷属まで済ませちゃって。
And I was hoping you could help me complete my collection. I mean, we're almost at the end, and I just need a few more. Of course, Shoma was ready to check off another evil sibling from his hit list until Nival pulled off probably one of his most devious moves ever. He called Shoma by his name. Yeah, while we can't say what happened in the summer movie that just came out, and I honestly don't want to be spoiled until I see it for myself, we do at least know that Shoma might have met versions of his siblings who were not evil. Thus, and while he knows that those people weren't his siblings, at least a small part of him still might want an actual good sibling, so he heard him out. You could say he's being a bit naive, but after all this poor guy's been through, even a smidgen of hope is well deserved at this point. Anyway, as for what he was proposing,
ストマック家の新しい当主にならない。
does it at least include some good life insurance? Yeah, probably not by this point. At this point, it basically became a game of guessing how sincere Nival was being, which I'd personally say was 50-50. Like, for one thing, I don't believe for a second that this dude actually loves the family business and wanted to just take it back from Boca. For him, status meant nothing as long as he could just do his research. That said, I do absolutely believe him when he hyped up his little brother as the best help he could ever find. After all, it has been shown that he's tried all of his other options like the bigger Gavv users, including his other brother. In fact, he's actually had his eye on Shoma ever since day one when he was shown to be immune to be compressing in spite of being half human. This led to probably the most interesting revelation of this episode, in that he was the one who actually set up Shoma's escape all the way back in episode 1 by letting his minions specifically be the guard to his room. He left the door open, and also might have rigged the chair he was tied to. Neither that or that's just a really cheap prop chair, knowing Toei the latter might actually be a little more probable. Thankfully, in spite of all this, Shoma wasn't just going to believe the shady glasses because he also clearly saw him as just a tool. However, Nival still had a little gas left in his negotiation.
ボッカジャルダックを倒して君が大統領になるってことだ。君の権力で止められるんだよ。
He even presented him with the ultimate solution to prevent the creation of dark treats by disabling the portals to Earth, which, yeah, at this point, even if they did completely shut down Stomach Inc., there was no guarantee that, say, some other parties would try to create bootleg treats. This is all obvious setup for the show's endgame, but it was an important matter that needed to be addressed. How could the writers ensure that dark treat production would be stopped completely, and what steps would they need to take to do so? The two continued their discussion while walking along the... We already used that clip last week. But yeah, in order to make it a quid pro quo, Shoma asked Nival to release all of the remaining human presses that they had left, which kinda surprisingly, he instantly agreed to. Meanwhile, Hanto and Sachika ran to each other with the former going to check in on Lakia. Thus Sachika decided to tag along to see where he lived, and they just so happened to pick the worst time to go, as Lakia was in the middle of testing Dente's antidote while in his true form.
おい。Sachika.
Bruh, what the hell? You let a chick see my junk. However, Sachika quickly assured the two that she had already seen Lakia in the buff during the beach incident. Thus, appearances didn't really matter to her, which, considering how open-minded Sachika has been shown to be throughout the series, that was always probably going to be the case. So, all that really mattered to her was the person and their actions, which, yeah, about that.
もしかしてラキアン、あの触手で人間を襲ってた。
Yeah, I'm actually glad that they're revisiting this plot point, as when you get down to it, even if there were 0 casualties, it doesn't change the fact that Lakia had rather callously drugged and kidnapped many people for his narrow-minded goal of avenging his brother. As a result, we got both what I'd consider some proper resolution to that plot point, with Lakia fully acknowledging and apologizing for it, and more importantly, some character development for Sachika. Because again, of the core main characters of the show, she has unfortunately unfortunately gotten the least of it, so a good way of addressing it would be by challenging her morals and how they were kind of shallow.
みんな幸せがいいとか言ってラキアンはみんなの幸せ奪ったりもし
She had become close to someone who she had wanted to live a happy life with, and yet he ultimately caused a lot of pain for others. Thus, would it even really be right to be with someone like that? Also, serious credit to Nozomi Miyabe here for getting across Sachika's conflictions and even being able to cry on cue. I mean, sure, she's not as good as, say, Yusuke Hino, but still credit where it's due. And in a bit of a parallel to this B-plot, Shoma was still agonizing over how much he'd be willing to sacrifice in order to restore Granute free peace to this world. And coincidentally, Liesel decided now of all times to launch a chaotic attack by first baiting out Shoma and then alerting a Granute who was disguised as a fortune teller. Oh, come on, dude. We all know that's not what you're actually supposed to say. Also, yeah, this guy was a very obvious repaint of the crab monster from the first 4 episodes of the second core of the series. I guess they figured they may as well get their money's worth from this costume. Though really, I'm just disappointed that we didn't get another scene like this. But no, Hanto didn't even henshin in this episode, and instead helped rescue a bunch of civilians after Liesel just decided to casually destroy a building, though not quite as thoroughly as her dad. During the rescues, Lakia helped, which made Sachika realize that while her friend's sins will never truly go away, everyone deserves a second chance, and she could help with that recovery. That is, unless he has an X account, and then everyone's probably just gonna hound on the poor guy even after he passes away. Anyway, Shoma defeated Dr. Notberg with a fairly standard sequence by this point. However, the ultimatum this time held a little more weight, as it pretty much confirmed for him that there will always be dark treat addicts even after they take down Stomach Inc. Later, the heroes held a really wholesome little after party where Lakia and Sachika managed to make amends, and for a brief moment, they all looked like one big happy family. However, Shoma couldn't stick around, as Naivo very surprisingly managed to stick to his word and delivered seemingly their entire human press supply. So at the very least, it did seem like he literally did put any stock in the dark treats. And regardless, Shoma pretty much had to keep up his part of the bargain at this point. With that, the episode ended with Shoma secretly saying farewell to his friends as he embarked on what he viewed as his final mission as a Kamen Rider, though with a little someone watching as they left. This was a pretty solid episode that did help to move the plot of this final arc forward. It provided almost all the heroes with some good moral dilemmas that had been a long time coming. Sure, not a ton happened per se, but it was at least some intriguing setup. When it comes to Kamen Riders, especially from the early days of the Showa era, which this show has been borrowing a lot of influence from, a common theme they had to go through was addressing how much of their own happiness they'd have to sacrifice for the greater good. In this case, and while he was clearly being manipulated, Naivo was right that in order to truly end this conflict, the human and Granute worlds need to be cut off from each other permanently. Because even without the stomachs or the president, someone would likely start up a dark treats cartel all over again, and they'd just be back at square one. Thus, it was hard to say if Shoma was even doing the wrong thing in trusting Naivo, when really, they just don't have too many options. Obviously, they'll find something by the end of the show, but I do like how there's no real right or wrong answer in this sort of situation. Meanwhile, Laki and Sachika had their own, less grave, and yet still important conflict, with both needing to accept the former's sins when he initially came to Earth. The solution was always kind of obvious, but it was decent enough drama, plus it made for some sweet shipping fuel between these two. Sadly, Hanto was kind of sidelined for much of this episode, so he didn't get much love from Shoma, but maybe he'll get more later, especially after that cliffhanger. And overall, this is a pretty good episode that progressed the arc towards the show's climax. Forgiveness can be earned, but true happiness is never truly guaranteed. Thanks for watching, and if you want some more spicy takes, I think we got a few videos like that on this channel. We've got something new coming out almost every day, where I do try to express my thoughts and opinions with no filter, other than what YouTube restricts. Look forward to whatever comes next. Until then though, for now my friends, and yeah, I think I need to get some water. The spice gets to you after a while.